The gas station I worked at had always been a quiet, uneventful place on the outskirts of town, at least until that fateful night. The hours were long and the isolation was unnerving, but it paid the bills. I was used to the occasional odd customer, but nothing could have prepared me for the strange couple who would haunt my memories forever. It was around midnight when I first noticed them. I was behind the counter, pretending to be engrossed in a book to pass the time. The night was still, with only the distant hum of passing cars breaking the silence. A pair of flickering headlights pulled into the lot, and I looked up, my heart doing a little flip in my chest. The couple emerged from an old, beat-up sedan, their figures obscured by long, dark coats and the unmistakable scream masks. The scream masks were what immediately set me on edge. They were horrifying, with the elongated, ghostly face and the stark black eyes. My mind couldn't help but conjure images of the iconic movie as I watched them through the security cameras, my unease growing with each step they took. The couple approached the store, their eerie scream masks hiding any hint of their identities. My heart pounded like a drum as they rattled the door, but it was locked, as it should have been at this hour. I had learned to be cautious working the night shift. The couple exchanged a few muffled words, and then, to my horror, they began to bang on the glass door with their gloved fists, their scream masks leering menacingly. I knew I needed to act quickly. With trembling hands, I ducked behind the counter, grabbing my phone and dialing 911. I whispered my location and described the masked couple outside, emphasizing the eerie scream masks. The dispatcher assured me that the police were on their way, but every passing second felt like an eternity. The pounding on the door grew louder, and I could hear the couple's muted, eerie laughter behind their scream masks. It was as if they were reveling in the terror they were causing. In a state of sheer panic, I tiptoed to the office at the back of the store, my trembling hands fumbling to lock the door behind me. I huddled in the corner, my heart pounding in my chest, and prayed for the police to arrive soon. Minutes felt like hours as I listened to the relentless assault on the front door. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the night, and I let out a shaky breath of relief. The police had arrived. I stayed hidden in the office, waiting for the confrontation to unfold. I could hear the muffled voices of the officers and the couple outside. Tense moments passed, and then the unmistakable sound of police commands filled the air. I peeked through the office door just in time to see the masked couple, their eerie scream masks now illuminated by the police car's flashing lights, being ordered to the ground. They complied, slowly removing their masks to reveal their faces. The officers secured the area, and I cautiously emerged from the office, trembling but grateful for the police intervention. The scream masks had been removed, revealing two individuals who were likely just thrill seekers, but the fear they had instilled in me that night would not be easily forgotten. As the police took the couple into custody, I locked up the gas station, thankful that the nightmare was finally over. The gas station had always been a place of solitude and routine, but now it was tainted with the memory of those menacing scream masks and the chilling realization that some terrors walk the night, hidden behind disguises of horror. Working the graveyard shift at a gas station was never on my teenage bucket list, but there I was, feeling like a character straight out of a cheesy horror movie. My shift was just as dull as usual, with the dimly lit store casting long shadows that seemed to dance and taunt me. The clock on the wall was mercilessly slow, its tick-tock echoing through the empty store like a metronome. I leaned on the counter, trying to stay awake by flipping through a comic book when I heard it. The door chimed an eerie, off-key tune, signaling the entrance of someone. I looked up, expecting the usual late-night customer, but what I saw sent shivers down my spine. A man shuffled in, or at least I think it was a man. He was wrapped in a threadbare overcoat that looked like it had seen better days. Greasy strands of hair hung over his face, concealing his features in the murky darkness of the store. His hands were trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. I attempted a polite greeting, but it got stuck in my throat when I noticed his bizarre behavior. He was mumbling something under his breath, words I couldn't quite make out. They were low and disjointed, like he was speaking in tongues. His eyes were wide, and they had this weird yellowish tint that freaked me out. He staggered towards the drink coolers, grabbing cans of soda one after the other. But here's the really messed up part. Every time he selected a can, he smashed his head against the glass door of the cooler. A thud filled the air each time, and I winced, wondering if he was trying to crack his skull open. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 on the sly, trying not to let him see me. I whispered to the dispatcher, describing the whole creepy scene, and she told me they were sending an officer over. I felt a bit safer, but the man's bizarre ritual was far from over. He kept muttering and headbutting the cooler each time with more fervor. It was like he was trying to knock some sense into himself. Blood was now trickling down his forehead, mixing with the faint smell of gasoline in the air. I was too terrified to move closer, afraid of what he might do if I got too close. Time crawled by, and the minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the disturbing spectacle. The atmosphere in the store grew heavier, and I swear it was like his madness was infecting everything around him. Finally, the bright blue and red lights of a police cruiser pierced the darkness. 2 officers walked in cautiously, hands resting on their holstered weapons. They tried to talk to the man, but he was in his own world, oblivious to their presence. His muttering had turned into an eerie chant, something straight out of a horror movie. One of the officers gently touched the man's shoulder, attempting to guide him outside. That's when everything went haywire. The man snapped. He shoved the officer so hard that the poor guy went tumbling into a display of chips. The other officer pulled his gun, shouting at the man to get down, but he just ignored him. Instead, he lunged at the officer, his hands reaching for the cop's face. A gunshot cracked through the air and the man crumpled to the floor. The officer who had been attacked was shaking, pale as a ghost. The other officer checked the fallen man for any signs of life. The dispatcher on the phone asked me to stay on the line, but I could barely find my voice. The gas station had turned into a scene right out of a horror video game, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a character stuck in this twisted plot. The police later told me that the man had been battling severe mental illness. His actions that night were a terrifying glimpse into his tortured mind. It was a wake-up call that real-life horror doesn't always come in the form of masked killers or supernatural creatures. Sometimes, the most frightening thing you can encounter is the chaos lurking within a fragile human mind. As the paramedics arrived to tend to the man, I realized that my mundane job had become something out of a horror story, one I would share with my friends but never forget. And that night, under the dim, flickering lights of that gas station, I learned that sometimes the darkness is not just outside, it's within us all. Working the night shift at the gas station on the lonely highway was never part of my grand plan, but a desperate need for cash to pay off my student loans brought me here. The buzzing neon sign above the pumps and the faint hum of electricity were the only companions during those long, eerie hours. On this particular night, a thick fog rolled in, blanketing the area in an eerie silence. It was a few minutes past midnight when a flickering pair of headlights pierced through the haze. A rusty pickup truck pulled up to the gas pumps, its engine sputtering. I watched from behind the counter, my heart racing, as a tall, lanky man wearing a tattered brown jacket emerged from the truck. His unkempt hair and disheveled appearance sent shivers down my spine. With a deep breath, I greeted him as he entered the store. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you tonight?" The man didn't reply. Instead, he wandered the dimly lit aisles, his eyes scanning the shelves, but he didn't seem interested in the products. He gave off an eerie vibe, making my skin crawl. I kept a close eye on him through the security cameras as he approached the counter, a crooked grin stretching across his face. He placed a small item on the counter, a chocolate bar, and reached into his pocket, producing a crumpled $20 bill. As I reached for the cash, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist with an iron grip. His eyes locked onto mine, and in a cold, raspy voice, he whispered, "You're going to give me all the money in the register, and you're not going to scream or do anything stupid. Understand?" Panic surged through me, my heart pounding like a drum. I nodded, barely able to speak. With a sinister smile, he released my wrist and gestured toward the cash register. "Hurry up now." I fumbled with the register, my hands trembling as I handed him the bills. He snatched the money, stuffing it into his jacket, all the while keeping those cold, unblinking eyes fixed on me. "Now," he growled, "you're going to turn around, count to 100, and don't even think about calling the cops. If you do, I'll come back for you." I nodded again, my breath shallow, and I did as he said. I turned away, listening to the eerie sound of his footsteps receding. When I finally turned back, the man was gone, the fog swallowing him up just as it had moments before. Tears welled in my eyes as I reached for the phone, calling the police and describing the robber's appearance and his rusty truck. But deep down, I knew he was long gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. The police arrived quickly, but there was no trace of the man. They took my statement and assured me they'd do everything they could to find him. I watched as their taillights disappeared into the fog, leaving me alone once more. And as I stood there, shaken and robbed, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever see that menacing man again, or if he'd remain an unsettling memory of my nights at the gas station on the lonely highway.